You're listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers.
Like I said to this before, I disagree that you're an activist. You are, and only you may not feel it in your soul as in how you perceive activists, but you've done more for this movement in our industry than almost anybody. So this is a good time to kind of transition. So Protect Our Winters is 4 years old now. Protect Our Winters
4 years old, yeah.
So you were working with Protect Our Winters in the United States,
yeah,
with Jeremy Jones, and when it first got started there. And then there was an opportunity to start a Canadian chapter with a gentleman named Dave Erb, who is just, well, let's not even say just, like he's basically built this thing from nothing to this powerhouse within Canada. I'm going to call it powerhouse, right?
It's been, I mean, it's pretty impressive what him and the POW team have been able to accomplish in the last 4 years, for sure.
And the reason I said just was because he has just announced that he's stepping aside. So I wanted, and I've been involved, in a small way with Protect Our Winters as an ambassador, doing what I can to connect people and put a little bit of a message out. But the work that he's done, and realizing that we tried to do one of these before, actually at a POW summit, the audio was pretty terrible in the little rainy building, and I felt terrible. I was really sick that day too, I think. So we weren't able to use it, but I'm like thinking we haven't given the Protect Our Winters a proper episode, kind of the proper attention it needs. And having Dave step aside, I thought it was a perfect time to kind of honor what he has done and what he's accomplished for this organization within Canada specifically.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dave, there was a group of us athletes here, mostly Whistler based, some guys in Revelstoke as well, that were trying to get Protect Our Winters Canada off the ground.
With Tobin and McIntosh and yourself.
Greg Hill,
Marie.
Chris Rubens, Marie Francois. And we were all POW athletes in the U.S. But we were like, Canada needs this too. The world needs this, really. And so we were having some meetings and trying to figure out how to get everything off the ground. And I mean, a bunch of pro skiers and snowboarders, we were not the most savvy at trying to get a not-for-profit, registered and all the legalities taken care of and all these sorts of things. Not to mention we were trying to do it in the winter when everyone's busy. I was going to say,
I'd be surprised if you were all able to get into the same room or at least on the same phone call at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, literally, that's the level we were at.
I have tried to get skiers on this podcast to come at a specific day or time for 9 years, and it's probably the hardest thing in the entire world is to nail somebody down. I had a couple of people lined up last week. They're like, oh, no, I'm not coming to town. I'm leaving. Oh, whatever. I had to do something else. I'm like, all right, no big deal.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing is that Dave Erb popped out of nowhere with a phone call to me and said, hey, I was just talking to the people down at Protect Our Winters in the U.S., and they said that you were trying to get this going in Canada. And I was thinking the exact same thing, and it would be great if we had a conversation. And we did. I think Dave and I spent 2 hours on the phone and hit it off, and our visions were more or less aligned, and he had all this positive energy, and he also had the know-how, how to register a nonprofit, how to do all the legalities, how to get us set up in a way that we could thrive in the future. Because if you don't do all these things right and in the right order and take your time at the beginning, you can have problems down the way. So Dave came in, and he was like sent from the heavens, man. I was so happy because all of a sudden it took that pressure off our athlete group, and we were able to just advise Dave. He would call myself, he'd call Greg Hill, he'd call Ian McIntosh, and he would sort of pick our brains from sort of the ski snowboard marketing side, and then figure out how to integrate that into a not-for-profit environmental group. And also, I mean, we were lucky too, because Protect Our Winters has been going for about a decade down in the U.S. at this point, and they had a lot of know-how and a lot of programs up and running, and we were able to sort of piggyback on their coattails and then sort of
use Dave as a way to assimilate it through Canadian policy and Canadian rules.
Exactly,
and
guidelines.
Because
because you can't do everything exactly the same, but we were able to borrow a lot of what POW had done in the U.S. and then adapt it for Canada. And then Dave, in the years since then, has taken it and run with it in directions that they haven't done in the U.S. So I mean, I can't say enough about Dave. He is one of those just absolutely incredible individuals.
Yeah, and the growth has been extremely fast in Canada, and a lot of it has to do with the creativity that Dave and the team and you guys have come up with as well. Everything from like the Fact Back campaign, which is one of the first real big, cool kind of Twitter social media campaigns where you can really drive engagement. What's the one, oh shoot, I should have written these down, because there's just been so many, like, and they've all been pretty impressive. Who comes up with all these ideas for these individual campaigns? Because they're so creative, and I know that people down in the States have been paying attention, being like, whoa, that's awesome, like, we're going to adopt this as well.
Well, I would say that Dave is the front man, and I think that Dave comes with the most ideas, but we have a pretty big staff now. I think we're already up to 7 or 8 people that work for POW Canada.
Wow.
I mean, it's so there's a lot of credit to be shared around for sure. And then we have a board. I think our board is might be up to 9 now on the POW board, and we've got some really smart people on the board. And between staff and the board and just passionate people that care, that are sending us ideas, I think part of the problem is just trying to keep up, honestly, and figure out and filter and what are we going to do. If I had to go back and look at what Dave's done, I think the most impressive thing to me is that he organized community chapters of POW. And he sort of, and it was, they haven't done that in the U.S. It's very centralized in the U.S. And it was risky. I remember when he first pitched the idea to me, and I was like, ooh, I don't know. We're kind of like giving up some control of the organization. What if things go sideways? But man, it has been absolutely huge, because it's one thing to focus on climate and focus at a national level. But people really, when you think about it, they're concerned about what's going on in their backyards. It's like that old growth forest up behind my house, or that mine that is spilling over into the edge of our town, or the air quality, or you name it. And so people want to get involved with things that they can see, they can feel, they can touch, and that affect their lives directly. And so we now have, I think we're up to, might be 11 community chapters now across Canada.
Wow.
So and that's been huge, because we have a leader in each of those communities who then rallies the membership there, and they get involved with things that I don't even know about. It's great. They're kind of going through what are the issues in our area, and
with events
action.
And things too. Like every once in a while, I'll see on Facebook the once a week that I sign in, like log into Facebook, I'd be like, oh, there was a POW event.
Yeah.
In a Whistler chapter event.
Yeah, and a lot of times I don't even know what's
right?
going on in this town. If I'm tuned out like you are, and I haven't been on Facebook for a week, I may have missed a POW event, but there could have been 50 people there that were passionate about what was going on.
Well, that just speaks to the strength of the organization that they've built, is that as the board, who's more or less been the face of POW Canada for the last 4 years, if you don't necessarily know what's going on or need to know what's going on, do you know what I mean? You can just let it run.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and we've got such a passionate crew, and they're running with it, and it's great. I shouldn't need to know what's going on all the time. You know what I mean? Like, right. If for an organization to run right, it's good for me to like have like an idea of what the trends are, where we're heading, what our major campaigns are. But this thing, I mean, we need all hands on deck. I mean, if we're frank about this, this is a big issue that needs to be that we need action on right away. So
for people listening, what would you say is the primary goal of POW? Like, if you had to say it in kind of a short little paragraph. Mission statement.
Our mission statement is to take outdoor enthusiasts and turn them into passionate climate advocates. Mm-hmm. So I mean, as outdoors people, and that's really where POW's focused. It started with snowboarders and skiers, but it's really now encompassing the whole outdoor sport community, who in our opinion, should be the people most concerned with what's going on with the environment. I mean, we're the people that are out there in the field. We're in the forest. We're on the mountains and the glaciers, in the ocean, seeing what's going on, right? So if we can't get fired up and do something about this, then no one can. So our goal at POW is to give that community, that outdoor community, a place to come together where their voice can be multiplied and amplified and to try and make change to affect, in our specific instance, policy in Canada, whether that's government policy, corporate policy, or just trends, like trying to push people, let's be more environmentally conscious.
So what would be like so say there's a bill coming, or there's let's just say, for just thinking about like Fairy Creek or something, or something. Let's just say there's a plot of land that they want to develop, and it's got some nice biodiversity, and it's something that needs to be protected. We'll just use that as the example, right? So what would be the steps from POW to say, hey, we need to protect this, or we need to make sure that this bill that can allow this to be mined or harvested or anything, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What are the steps you take in order to make this change? Because that's a lot of you're saying is we're getting all these people combined. We're increasing their awareness, and we want to be able to have these voices to create change. Well, how are you able to create that change? What's the steps?
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's a good question, because one of the cool things about the way we work with POW, especially here in Canada, is that we work with a lot of different environmental groups. So Eco-Justice, for example, is a group that we are in constant contact with. They are keeping their finger on the pulse of all the policy stuff that's going on.
Are they like a law firm, or?
They're a legal environmental group. So they're focused on policy level stuff and what's legal, like what can we do to stop that old growth clear cut that we're talking about, for example. We also work very closely with a lot of the other environmental organizations, be it David Suzuki Foundation or Stand Earth or you name it, across the board, and we're trying to coordinate so that we can use. I mean, our membership is very different than the membership of Greenpeace or the Sierra Club, and so we're all trying to sort of pool our groups and use our voice more collectively. Now we rely a lot on people like Eco-Justice who understand, okay, well, you can go to Fairy Creek and protest, which is great. I mean, the Fairy Creek, the people that have spent their lives there for the last year or two really trying to fight what's going on there, it's wonderful. But ultimately, even if they're successful, the people on the ground, they may be able to stop Fairy Creek from getting logged. But we're kind of like on the back end with POW and with Eco-Justice, is we're trying to figure out, how can we stop this from happening again? Mm-hmm. And so we're working at a bunch of different levels, and that's, when it comes to campaigns, that's where we're focused, is like, how can we actually affect change at the level where new fossil fuel developments or drillings or whatever can't happen in the future, rather than just trying to stop each one single little thing.
And is it basically just boiled down to power in numbers? Right? If we have enough people saying we don't want this, that's going to make the policy makers be like, oh, okay, well, there's a bunch of people that don't want this. Is this going to outweigh how much money we're going to make on this? Or do you know? Is that kind of to simplify it in a layman's terms?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you have 500,000 people coming out against something, the government's going to notice.
Right.
In POW Canada, I think we're at 23,000 members, which is significant and impressive in 4 years. But we need more voices. We need more. The more voices we can have speaking in unison, the more power we have. And the classic example is the NRA in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
National Rifle Association. Look at the lock they have on politics in the U.S. and the gun lobby. I mean, it's not a positive example, but it's an example of what a big organization can do.
So basically, without using the word, because it's kind of, people see it as a dirty word, is you want to be the environmental lobby.
Yeah, for sure.
Basically.
For sure. I mean, look what we're up against.
Right.
Fossil fuel industry makes billions and billions of dollars every year. Now we rely on fossil fuels. It's the way our society is constructed. But the scientists have made it clear we cannot continue with business as usual with fossil fuels. But when an industry that has created a way of life, hydrocarbons, I mean, it's a very efficient way to get energy. When an industry makes billions of dollars by doing things a certain way, it's really hard to fight against them because they send the lobbyists to Ottawa. They do the PR campaigns. I mean, we've all seen it during the hockey games. It's like, oh, look at our we're greening the way we do things. I mean, there's so much BS involved, but that's what we're up against. And the only way we can do it is by beating them with numbers.
You've been listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers. This has been a Redmark Media production.